Store podcast.
There's no more room in hell. The dead will walk here.
We have such sights to show you.
I kick ass for the Lord!
Great Scott! Keep away!
Welcome to the House by the Video Store podcast. I'm your host, William, and joining me today will be Sean.
Hello.
And Derek.
Hello.
And in this episode, we'll be comparing or discussing the 1978 George Romero classic Dawn of the Dead and the 2004 remake that was made by Zack Snyder, who recently made Superman Destroys Metropolis, a.k.a. Man of Steel. And he's got Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice League Part 3.
Yeah, and he did 300, that movie with the Japanese schoolgirl costume and the samurai sword. What was that?
Sucker Punch.
Yeah, Sucker Punch. And
Watchmen.
did he do something else? Watchmen, yeah.
So he has quite the varied filmography of things in slow motion.
Yeah.
We should do a Zack Snyder slow-mo, montage, just every slow motion shot, and it'll probably end up being like a 35-minute video at least.
Or we can just do our podcast in that format, so it's like, hello, what are you doing today? We're talking about
The Zack Snyder cast.
According to Dave Chappelle, though, if you do things in slow motion, it makes them better.
It does make them cooler.
So maybe it's not a bad idea.
You know what we should do? We should take all the slow motion scenes he's done and put them in real time speed. So it'd be like, are these actually cool, or they just look cool because they're in slow motion?
That just reminds me of Evil Dead 2, where they would do reverse act and then flip it around. So maybe we should just do that.
Sam Raimi regularly told Bruce Campbell, "You're doing the worst reverse acting I've ever seen." All right.
Speaking of that, did you guys see the? We're recording this on Sunday night, the day after 4th of July. Did you guys see that little promo video that Bruce Campbell posted?
So the Tumblr video or the one of the classic?
No, the classic. Yeah, I mean, I saw the Tumblr one too, but the classic just came out, which is awesome because it's actually footage from the show. I mean, that's a shot from the show, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's only
I didn't
like 2
recognize
seconds,
that.
but
Yeah, I didn't recognize that.
Yeah,
but
they also posted a picture, or Bruce Campbell did on his Twitter, of like him and I think Sam Raimi and a couple people. He was actually in costume with the chainsaw on his arm too.
yeah, and they've got that set photo.
Yeah.
Yes.
But hey, I at least like the look of it. It didn't look like a cheap show. I mean, granted, it's one shot that's like 3 seconds, but
Well, according to what I've read, on Friday, July 10th, they will release the promo video to the internet after it's shown at Comic-Con. So we can look forward to that this week.
we'll try to get that up on the site depending on everybody's work schedule. But that's definitely something that'll be a high priority that day, I think.
Yeah, that's going to be I guess we can just kind of, tie this into what we've been watching. So something that's going to be interesting this year, more so than any year. So right now we have on MTV, they have a reboot of the Scream series in TV form. Pretty soon there will be Ryan Murphy's Fox show, Scream Queens, that has Jamie Lee Curtis and Emma Roberts in it. Then you have Ash versus the Evil Dead. And then isn't Wes Craven signed on to work on 2 horror-based shows?
Really? That's interesting.
And David Robert Mitchell, the guy that directed It Follows, is also working on a horror-based show.
It's kind of funny because it seems that just kind of just the past year, it just really picked up a lot of steam. Maybe not the past year, the past couple of years, because American Horror Story and stuff like that too. But it seems like it's picking up a lot of steam, though, horror on TV.
Television's definitely changing, you know what I mean, a lot. And that's what a lot of people from film, interestingly enough, is moving over to television. Even, not that this is horror related, but Woody Allen, who's had a career for, 40, 50 years in movies and done a movie a year pretty much since the 70s, now he's doing an Amazon series. So it's interesting. Everybody's doing some type of TV show now almost.
Yeah, it's kind of like the, I guess, the in thing to do.
Something else we didn't mention was Robert Rodriguez's From Dusk Till Dawn series. It's on his El Rey network. That's another kind of movie to TV adaptation.
And they're going to have a season 2 of that, right? Or is it already started? Because I don't have El Rey.
I think they'll have it. I don't think it started yet. I watched season 1 on Netflix. I meant to write a story about it, but then I just never got around to it because it didn't really give me any strong feelings in either direction.
Yeah.
But this week I watched the series premiere of Scream on MTV. Not to get into any spoilers, put a video out on Facebook of it. Didn't go to YouTube because Viacom shut that shit down, but it's on YouTube and it's on the site. But the series started off about like you would expect an MTV series to. Everybody's really pretty. Everybody's got really big houses and got a lot of money.
Extremely rich.
Like there's a party scene, and in the garage there's like a Porsche and like two other super high-end cars, and
it's like somebody opened the door and left the keys in, and she's like, not even worried about it. It's like, I'd be kind of freaking out a little bit.
Yeah, and for the record, I did not have time to watch it this week. I wanted to, but then it's one of those things where I kind of was like, don't want to, because I kind of want it to be a mystery, because I wanted it to be so good. Well, but I'm definitely going to watch it. I just was making this week's video and everything.
I mean, it's not that like it was a bad show. Like, it's just, to me, first of all, I'm not the target age range for the show, because we should specify that if you're not from like 15 to 20, maybe 20 is almost a little old too. It's like, this is definitely a high school person show,
as it should be for the network, unless they were trying to draw in a broader crowd.
Which I don't really feel like they were, because it just. But then again, the original Scream movies were too. I mean, you look at the disposable cast of the first one; they were all in high school too. But at least on this one, I feel like most of the people are probably the actual age they're supposed to be, instead of having like 37-year-olds play 14, 18, 19-year-olds, or whatever else. But I just get lost on a lot of this stuff when they're just so rich. Because I do not feel bad for you if you have like one of the first scenes is a girl in a house, and in her house they have a courtyard with a like full-size pool and hot tub, and it's like, yeah, if anything bad happens to you, I don't feel bad because you're extremely rich. It's just like you don't care for them. It's just like, they don't. I don't know.
It's unrelatable. You can't really relate as much.
Yeah, just really unrelatable, and it's just a bunch of. If you can get past the teenage melodrama that's going to be in it, it might actually be something there. But
I like, to be fair. Well, I was like probably 13 at the time, but I liked MTV's Undressed, which was their soap opera. But I was 13 at the time. So.
Well, it's just funny because it is MTV, so if you're going to watch it, and I guess next time, didn't you watch them in a streaming service or something, William?
Yeah, I am a cheap person. I don't have cable right now, mostly because I just don't watch enough stuff on cable. So I just use the login information from my parents' cable account. So I logged into the MTV app, and you can watch it on there. Well,
I'm going to say this. If you don't want to watch commercials about JesusChats.com, condom commercials, STD prevention, or no smoking, or, man, what else? Because one time in one of the commercials, I swear it was condom commercial, talk with Jesus, no smoking, STDs, Magnum condoms. And that was like the commercial loops for the entire time. And just, I forgot how MTV was like that. So it's very hard to watch.
But back to the, like I said, I don't even know if they have commercials on the app or not. I don't really remember. But back to the show, like
that speaks a lot about the show when we're talking about the commercials.
Yeah, that's what you're looking forward to.
Well, two, I was watching it in a manner. I was trying to watch it as quickly as possible and then start working on a video about it. And it's not a dumpster fire. It's not as bad as it could have been, but it didn't really do anything to grab me off the bat, and it didn't do anything to feel like the movie series. Like, I knew that it was different cast, different location, different wardrobe for the killer, but nothing about it felt like the prior films.
Do you want to discuss the mask at any length, or just let
Well, apparently just based on some of the previews I've seen for later in the seasons, there might be more masks, so it's yet to be seen how that works out. I mean, I think that the mask kind of takes the ghost face idea and makes it a little bit more humanoid.
But everybody online keeps commenting how it looks like a blow-up doll. The blowjob mask,
yeah,
as it's called.
It's just another thing too, though, is apparently I think we had some discussion of this on the last podcast, or maybe the one before. We're talking about just a little bit of a spoiler, but whatever. They are in a classroom, kind of like the second one, discussing horror movies, where they didn't bring up the original Scream or anything about it. So, You know, I guess it's not that
stuff. It's the same universe, possibly.
Yeah, I guess so, because it doesn't acknowledge the original at all. So it could be in the same universe. But they did, ironically enough, talk about Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you know, and what was the other slasher they brought up? They brought up Texas Chainsaw and something.
They also referenced TV horror. So they talked about Bates Motel and Hannibal and Walking Dead. So it's one of those things where a few episodes from now, it could have either kind of, you know, brought itself back to form and be something that's worth watching for, you know, even people who are, you know, not the demographic of 15 to 21. It could be something that's a must-watch for fans of the original series, or by that point it'll probably have clearly delineated that, you know, if you don't use Snapchat and Tumblr, this isn't for you.
But oddly enough, though, they did use the exact like openings, like, you know, like the screen credits from the original movie. It's pretty similar from what I remember.
Maybe after a few episodes they'll kind of find their way or footing, or, you know.
But what was the
Ty West is directing some episodes, I think.
So yeah, he's directing at least one. So if they bring people in to direct episodes who know what they're doing, they could at least make it, you know, fun to watch.
And that'll bring in people who maybe don't normally watch it on a weekly basis. Like, oh, I'm going to watch the Ty West episode, you know?
What was the guy from the first one that was one of the killers that was in all the movies in the 90s and was Shaggy from Scooby-Doo?
Oh, Matthew Lillard.
Yeah, maybe he'll have a cameo where he just spits all over the place on somebody.
Man, you stab me too much.
And he spits all over the place, and that's like the big season finale. They take the mask off, and he's just drooling all.
This is like, you know, the 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, but you know, he was in the Scooby-Doo films, which was written by James Gunn, who also wrote the Dawn of the Dead remake. Today's podcast topic.
So it all goes together.
Yeah. So. This was kind of the first, you know, of the new wave of horror shows that's hitting the TV waves this year. So it definitely didn't land with a bang. Right now, it's more of a huh.
And I think it's kind of fair too to expect only one death per episode. That's probably what I would think.
Because I think the creators, like, somebody asked the creators, like, so are you going to have like a massive body count for this? And they said that, like, they didn't give any specifics away, but they said I think they said, like, their plan is to have, you know, some of the same characters carry over from season to season, but that they would have to restock the characters each season.
Yeah. And I think I read that too, and it almost gives it more weight, you know, like kind of Game of Thrones, like you care about the characters when they finally die.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, if they were killing, you know, like 2 characters per episode, the death toll would be, you know, like 20. I don't think a TV show can get away with that. Even The Walking Dead, like, kills out of the main cast, like, maybe 3 people a year at most. And they have 16 episodes versus 10. So, as of right now, Scream is an interesting thing to watch and see how it develops. It's not something that you must watch right now if you're a big fan of the original series. Just, you know, after a few episodes, there'll probably be a pretty good consensus as to where it's, you know, if it's worth watching or not. Aside from that, watched another episode of Hannibal, which this episode has some pretty freaking awesome action in it. It just makes that all the more sad that NBC canceled that show, and there's some news that makes it sound like it might be more difficult to get a new season made.
Yeah, I saw that. The contract's expired for the actors.
I mean, I think if anybody behind the show would have known that already. So I don't think any, like Brian Fuller, like the showrunner, I don't think he would have been making the statements he made without having known that. I'm sure he had to have known that, but hopefully that show will end up somewhere, because this season has been really cool and it's very, very violent.
What else? You watch anything else besides the 2 movies?
I watched, I didn't see the new Terminator, Genesis. I did rewatch the first Terminator. And it's kind of funny to think that it went from that, which was a very much like cat and mouse stalk movie or a chase movie with, you know, one character chasing 2, to what it became in like these massive in-universe movies with like spawning all these multiple sequels. And because even Terminator 2 was pretty focused.
Yeah, that's another one. Same thing with Terminator. Like, I kind of was scared to go. I didn't really have time this weekend, but normally I like try to make time. But I was like kind of too scared to see that because I don't want it to be bad, and I don't have high expectations.
Yeah, it's kind of like you know you'll probably enjoy what Arnold does, but are you going to enjoy the rest of the movie? Because it's just like, there's so many iterations of it at this point now. Because you have I don't know, I haven't seen every single movie in the franchise, but I don't know how much of it goes together. Like Does the Christian Bale one tie in with everything else, or is it just kind of its own movie? Or
So I think I haven't seen this one.
Christian Bale one did at the time.
I think
at the time it was all part of the same thing. But
I think what they've done with this is that since it's time travel, they've made it so convoluted and difficult to figure out what's in canon and what isn't that it's,
just kind of what they want to do.
Takes a flow chart to kind of sit down and map out what all fits together. So that's a movie I'll probably watch on, when it's video or something at some point. It didn't seem like anything that I had to watch. And the materials, the marketing materials spoiled like the big twist. So they get a D- or an F for effort on that.
Also, in Arnold Schwarzenegger news, doesn't the movie Maggie come out for HD release or something soon? Streaming HD or something?
VOD.
Yeah.
Oh. Are you eating something, Derek?
No.
Like I hear a fork hitting a plate.
Oh.
Well.
Yeah, I watched American Grindhouse, which is a documentary on like grindhouse films and stuff. And it was pretty good. It was like it's very informative and it's fun for the most part, but it's not like super fun, like something like Not Quite Hollywood. But it had interesting shows the interesting legacy of like grindhouse cinemas and like the difference between grindhouse films and exploitation films and stuff. So it was pretty good. I watched it on the SundanceNow.club. It's like a streaming service. They got me to sign up for that when I was in New York at the IFC Theater. They were like, "You want some free popcorn and a drink?" I was like, "Sure." They're like, "Sign up for the .club for the free trial." So I was like, "All right." I signed up, and then I went to cancel it, and then it was like, "No, you can have 2 more months for free." So I still have that as of now.
Did you get more free popcorn?
No, but I mean, it's a good service. Like it's awesome, but I pay for so many streaming services, and I pay for cable. But they have like American Grindhouse on there, Not Quite Hollywood, which I've watched several times. I think that used to be on Netflix. So yeah, it's a pretty good thing, but it's just documentaries. And then I watched, of course, both the Dawn of the Deads. I feel like that was it. Oh, and this week I did a video on Razorback, an exploitation film. So I watched that, of course, as well. And that was pretty much it. That's about all I set aside time for, is watching American Grindhouse after work one night when I just like had to do something besides work on their video and think about that stuff. What about you, Derek?
But between getting to watch Scream and these two movies, I didn't really have time to watch anything that relates to anything.
Yeah, it's kind of hard sometimes when you've got work going on and then also watching a couple movies for the podcast.
Yeah, especially when you're, layering it in between watching movies for the podcast, doing work, and making a video, and writing post, and trying to have a social life.
Yeah.
But so I guess that we can go into the main attraction now and talk about the Dawn of the Dead. We can start with the 1978 George Romero Dawn of the Dead. And ironically enough, like when I watched these movies originally, I actually saw Day of the Dead out of the original series first.
Wow.
Just was when in high school. I think I saw it when I went on a lake trip one weekend. It was just on the TV and I watched it. And I was like, "Oh, this is the famous Of the Dead series." Because Day of the Dead, it's okay. It's definitely not the best. It's definitely out of the originals. It's definitely Dawn of the Dead is the best.
Is Day of the Dead the one where they kind of like the zombie on a chain or something in the military base?
Yeah, Bud or whatever. Bub.
Yeah. Because I remember when we watched that, it scared all the little kids or something.
It's been a while since I watched that one, but I love that one. Like I'm always conflicted, going back and forth on which one's my favorite. Normally I think Night is, but like Dawn is, it feels like they said like The Shining's the first epic horror film. Like this also feels like an epic horror film just because of the scope of it. There's not many films. Like in this film, you assume the timeline, it's like, what, 7-8 months maybe or something?
Yeah, with her pregnancy.
Yeah, she mentions she's pregnant and she's visibly very pregnant by the end. So already it's an interesting element because most films don't cover that big of a timeline, an average film. But if they do, there may not be anything significant. Whereas this, it's like them surviving and everything. It's not just like, oh, a year later, these two couples, these two people meet back together after being apart. And I feel like that's where some of the remake loses some of its weight.
Well, I think too, like when you look at these movies, So Night of the Living Dead, I think people assigned meaning to that after the fact that wasn't necessarily intended when it was created, like racial overtones and things. Because that was mostly just, George Romero picked the best actor he could think of for the lead role. As opposed to Dawn of the Dead, feels like it's a very conscious effort to call attention to consumerism, materialism. There's definitely, issues that, are not exactly subversive. Because, in the end, like, out of all, like, not to jump too far ahead, but comparing, the 2004 Dawn of the Dead to the original, in the original, they would have probably never left the mall if they weren't attacked by the biker gang.
Yeah.
As opposed to in the remake, they just decided, like, yeah, we've been here long enough for 1 month, because I think that's the timeline in that movie.
Yeah.
It's like, we've been here for 1 month. Fuck it. Let's go to an island.
That's one thing, too, those motherfucking biker gangs mess up everything in all of these movies. Like, in your Friday 13th movies, they screwed everything up, and you got screwed up things in this. Like,
they're the equivalent of the, the guys that roll across the outback in all the Australian exploitation films. That's the American after Hell's Angels, Boom, and everything like that.
So who would win between the biker gang from this movie and the biker gang from Mad Max?
I would probably say the one from Mad Max. Because the ones in this movie seemed kind of incompetent to a degree.
And then Tom Savini is kind of the ringleader. And you have to give it to that dude. He has not aged as poorly. He's aged very well compared to a lot of other actors from that era.
Mm-hmm. Especially, seeing him in the remake. I mean, I know. And then in Robert Rodriguez's Grindhouse, Planet Terror,
Yeah.
he was good in that, too. And that's fairly new, aside from being in From Dusk Till Dawn.
And it's just, I think that, and to the beginning of this movie gave something that
the original,
the original, the 1978 when they're having the police force go into I guess it's like in the apartment building and trying to get everybody out.
Yeah,
like that kind of gave a glimpse into something that I always wanted to see a zombie movie do, but they hadn't really done that much. Like a city besieged by zombies, like how would that work with the police force?
Yeah.
And that's, pretty early on into the life cycle of the zombie movies that actually, dipped into that a little bit and then went to the mall. Because, that's just something I always wanted to see. And that's why I was so disappointed that when the Resident Evil movies happened, like Resident Evil 2 was in a city and you could have done some of that. And they just said, fuck that, we're going to have all this bullshit that has nothing to do with it. But
yeah, I guess.
And then the third one was looked like it was going to be like a Mad Max type film. And it started out that way, and then it said, oh, fuck it, which I can't remember who it was, but I think an Australian filmmaker directed that third one.
Yeah, but too, like, this is a movie, the original Dawn of the Dead, that I feel like if you showed it to a younger audience, some of it would probably be lost, and they wouldn't, it wouldn't hold up as timelessly to a younger audience who's used to the current day Walking Dead style zombie film.
Well, I'll say this, though. Even with, like, The Walking Dead, in Walking Dead, they're, as much as I dislike it, their zombies are more true to form. While in this one, you literally have, like, a Jackie Chan zombie at one point, like in the remake, Dawn of the Dead. So I think that, like, this kind of goes back to the same thing we talked about with, your original Halloween and Texas Chainsaw. Is I think that nowadays, like, people are so ADHD on movies that they watch that this one that's a little bit slower. The zombies are a little slower pace that they just would lose interest because it does maybe not seem as intimidating as, some of the Dawn of the Dead remake zombies where, they're just gymnasts and, Olympic athletes once they become zombies.
And it's a different type of horror. It's a different intent with the, of the Dead series, because it is about putting humans in these situations and how they would deal with it. And then the zombies are just kind of there and they're obviously part of it. But, the terror, it kind of is creepy, them going slow and there's like a slow building tension more with that. Whereas the new one, it's just the remake. It's just typical horror action more than just straight horror.
And two, like the look of the zombies, too, when you compare these movies or any of these movies really zombie related, and the original essentially just blew makeup on people's faces, qualified them as a zombie. But they did have some pretty cool effects when the zombies got shot with like the blood squirting out and things like that. Because Tom Savini was the special or the makeup and effects artist on it. Oh, and I guess we should mention too, we watched the director's cut version that had the music by the Goblins. So I know there's multiple versions of this movie out there.
Yeah. Argento helped him produce that film, and then I can't remember exactly, but I feel like the Italian cut was the one with the music from Goblin. But anyway, you can get the special edition with like 3 different versions of it, I think, at least on there. But yeah, that's the one we watched. It's like 2 hours and 19 minutes.
Yeah, and too, like something that's, a big point of differentiation between the original film and the remake is in the original, you have 4 characters who go to the mall that you then spawn off from and see how they progress and what their character progression is. And in the remake, there were just a ton of characters that showed up. So only 1 or 2 of them really got any development. And even then, there wasn't a whole lot.
Yeah, it matters a lot more when somebody dies in that original because you've spent time with them. And, it is over such a long period of time. And, they've gotten close. Their relationships have changed. Well, in this new film, there's just so many people, so many interactions going on. Like William said, these characters don't develop as much, and you don't care about as much as the individual characters. It's just kind of fodder, like, oh, this person dies, this person's dead now, that person dies, which is fine for entertainment and pace value, but again, it's a different type of entertainment.
Yeah, another thing too, though, is like the original is kind of almost more like the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where it's almost more torturous, just because you think about what it'd be like being there for, the amount of time those people stayed there. Whereas, like, in the newer one, everything has happened so fast that it doesn't seem like it would be as emotionally and mentally draining, or even physically draining as what they were going through being there for as long as they were. And only being there with 4 people as opposed to being there with, 10 or 20. It kind of be a little bit cabin fever almost.
I think the one thing that does help the remake versus a lot of these other remakes is that it ditched all of the original characters and didn't try to make the mistake of recreating certain characters. Because I think that's a wise thing to do when you do a remake. Something the recent Evil Dead remake did is they don't even want to attempt to recreate the character of Ash and have someone else play it. So you just, find another character to fill that role or change the story some. And I think we said, like, the remake of Dawn of the Dead, like, when I saw it, I enjoyed it. I mean, I think it's an enjoyable film. And it came kind of at the beginning of the zombie revival in the 2000s. So we could argue about, what exactly started that. But I think it was 28 days later that kind of started the zombie craze back up.
Yeah, film. Even though they're like, some type of infected or disease or whatever. Almost positive that's definitely what started that back up. And that's also what got Edgar Wright and like Simon Pegg, they were able to finally get Shaun of the Dead produced because nobody would produce a zombie film. Like, nobody watches zombie films anymore. 28 days later came out and they finally said, okay. And at the time, I think in cinemas in the UK, at one point cinemas were showing Dawn of the Dead and Shaun of the Dead just based on when it got released, overseas and everything.
Yeah, and they both came out in the same time period.
Yeah, and this definitely just helped because this was successful, generally seen as a successful film. And it got people, it's another one of the films that got people re-interested in the zombie genre. It's like those 3 films hitting when they did, that's kind of what was the rebirth of zombies in pop culture, for sure.
Yeah. And I would argue that the best out of the bunch, and I think we all probably agree, would be Shaun of the Dead, because it towed the line between paying homage to all the zombie films that came before it, the Romero movies and things like that, while doing a new story, but infusing some humor with it without it being a parody, kind of like the original Scream did.
Yeah.
So that...
And James Gunn, he like I said, he wrote this one, who did Guardians of the Galaxy, and as you were saying, William, I think he made a lot of smart decisions with the script, like kind of abandoning almost everything about the other one aside from it involving zombies and people held up in a mall.
Yeah, that's really only 2 things that are even similar.
Yeah, because it would have been boring to see the same things over and over again. And even though I do prefer the original vastly to the remake, he tried some interesting things. And I think that's definitely commendable.
And they also use Richard Cheese, who's like a lounge singer to remake some songs, which I don't know. I was really enjoyed. That was like one of the things I got most out of this movie because I think when it came out, 2003,
Four.
I was like 14. I remember like all me and my friends went and got Richard Cheese's music to listen to it.
I had heard him before this a little bit, so I also enjoyed that. But another thing interesting is James Gunn, I was listening to a podcast the other day when he was being interviewed about Guardians of the Galaxy, and he wrote, the music is very much part of that film, and he wrote all of the songs into the script and kind of made it part of it. And it made me wonder if he wrote some of this music specifically into this script as well, because some of the songs are pretty fun. They break up the tempo and they add some humor to it, like Richard Cheese, and then the Johnny Cash for the intro song.
Yeah.
So I feel like he may have had a part in that, writing all that stuff in. And another thing, I was reading the original's reception of this film on Wikipedia, and Elvis Mitchell was writing for the New York Times at the time, and he said it is, let me see here. He said, Mr. Snyder's blood feast is strictly by the numbers. This second-rater could be the world's most expensive trauma film, which is interesting because James Gunn got his start on trauma films with Romeo and Juliet and everything. So it's fitting.
Yeah, and just the zombie genre in general, it's very, very hit or miss. Even Romero, modern-day Romero, has been very miss, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's kind of hard. You have to have a right blend. Like this one was in the phase of like the crazy zombies, like the over, like I said, like you had the really extremely over beast lady that became a zombie, and then she was like
remake.
Yeah, in the remake, and she was just very fast. And then I think at 1.2 they're in the parking garage, and there's a zombie with no legs that's like crawling, using its arms to crawl like monkey bars through the pipes in the parking garage to get people. And it's like, so this was kind of like a different type of zombie almost.
And also, too, it was like, not if you're just dead, that doesn't mean you're going to be a zombie. You have to be bit by one as well.
Yeah. Because it shows like The Walking Dead, it's like it doesn't, as long as you die, you become a zombie, right?
Yeah, that's how all of Romero's are.
Yeah.
Yeah, because in Romero's, when characters get bit, they don't immediately turn. They just eventually die from the bite, from the infection, and then will turn. And, like, in the original, the characters that are there, out of, so the Steve, a.k.a. Fly Guy, and Peter.
Flyboy.
Fly Guy, I don't know why, or Flyboy. I keep mixing up all these names. I just like to think of him as the, whatever I said.
Steven?
Yeah, Steven. But then, Roger's the first one to go, and he kind of went because he kind of got, loopy when they were trying to move around the trucks and kind of, got a little bit out there.
Yeah.
And then Steven's downfall was that he eventually became too attached to the mall and the materialistic things in them. Like, towards the end of that movie, when the biker gang breaks in, had he just, they had just stayed back and let them steal everything, they would have likely just, eventually just moved on and left, and then they would have been fine. But because he got too protective over the items there and them stealing things, it started a war between, Peter and Steven and the biker gang, which ultimately led to his demise.
Yeah, and he played an awesome zombie in this movie.
Yeah.
I think he's one of the better zombies in Romero's films. Each one normally has a standout. There's normally a standout role in most of them, but he did an awesome job in this, I think, as a zombie. But also one thing that always annoyed me about this film is how much Ken Foree says "flyboy" in the film. It always
Flyboy.
Then at one point he's like, up there with Fly Girl.
Wasn't he also in the original Night of the Living Dead?
Well, that's what I'm talking about, the original. But yes, he was in the remake for a moment.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Night of the Living Dead? No.
Yeah.
No,
I thought he was.
No.
He was in the remake. I think he was the one that made wasn't he the one that said the line about the dead coming back to Earth? Yeah.
Yeah. And we ran into him at Fright Night Film Fest here in Louisville. Remember that, William?
Yeah. Yeah, he
was kind of pissed off at us a little bit because we were standing in front of his table talking to.
Yeah, so like Corey went around. So the main people there we tried to talk to. So we talked to John Cassier. So you can see on our we did a video that was his top 5 episodes of Tales from the Crypt,
and like a straight interview as well.
Yeah, so we had an interview with him, and Corey had talked to Ken Foree and tried to just ask him about doing something for the site, and he kind of just shoot him off and. Was more interested in talking to a lady at his table, which is understandable.
That's fine if he didn't want to do it, but then he started getting all pissy because we were kind of standing near his table, but nobody was at his booth. We weren't blocking anybody. Nobody was going up to him.
Yeah, so I mean, we had all the camera stuff in the way, and he didn't seem too happy about it. But hey, he's been in Rob Zombie movies, so
yeah, that's the highest honor any actor could ever receive.
And that Fright Night was fun because we also went to the Halloween 5 panel with what was her name? The one that Tamara Glenn.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
She was interesting.
Yeah, she was on something, and John Cassier mentioned how he's been watching her all weekend, and she was kind of, having a good time.
I think Corey saw her naked.
Oh, he saw somebody. No, I think he saw some body painters or something.
I think we walked by the room where she was going to be in the body painting show.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So that may have been what that was. He's not here to verify, but back to Dawn of the Dead. I do have some friends that have watched this and the original who say they prefer the remake, and it's interesting to hear the reasons why. Because actually, Evan's somebody that said, like in the original, that they're the biker gang is taking pies and throwing the pie in the faces of zombies, and
which is awesome.
But it's also because
it's Romero's sense of humor too,
In the original, when they came in, like once they put the trucks blocking off the entrances to the mall, they kind of, they say they're going to go on a hunt, and they clear the mall out where the zombies are gone. Mm-hmm. And they're just living their life, and they don't become a threat at all until the end, and they're not really a threat until everybody kind of starts taking them lightly and fighting, the humans fighting, ignoring the zombies, and then they come back into being a threat.
Yeah, they kind of reclaim everything.
Go ahead, William.
And doesn't Peter call them zombies in the movie? I thought I don't
remember,
because I thought he did. I was like, wow, I didn't remember them ever saying zombie in those movies.
Yeah, he may have. I don't remember,
because he was relating it to when hell was full, the dead will walk again. Like that was relating back to something about Haitians and curses. And things like that.
Yeah.
So I think he was referring to them as zombies in the traditional sense of Haitian zombies. Like if you want to see a depiction of that, you can watch The Serpent and the Rainbow.
Or you just watch the film Zombie.
Yeah. But Bill Pullman's in The Serpent and the Rainbow, and he's in Independence Day.
Which has the greatest speech in any movie.
About the 4th of July.
Yeah. And they're not going to go quietly into the night, that thing. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah, there was a lot of white zombie. There was a lot of zombie films before Romero kind of re-standardized what modern zombies were with Night of the Living Dead. But another thing about this film, like I said, because it takes place over such a long amount of time, it's interesting because it's almost an inverse of the original film, where the original one was just basically one night, I think.
Yeah.
And, this is a very long time period. So it's interesting to see him play with those things. And again, even though the original, he didn't intentionally, it intentionally wasn't a social commentary. He cast it like the black male lead and had him slap Barbara, whatever her name is. And he was like, what the hell, dude? He's like, people are going to go crazy. And George Romero didn't think anything about it, So it wasn't intentional. But this film it did a lot. It did a lot of interesting things and kind of played with it. And I think it was worth him taking 10 years off each of these films when he did them. Unfortunately, Land didn't turn out as well as those other ones. I liked Land of the Dead, but yeah, it just didn't have as much weight as any of those first three.
Well, I think another thing too, though, is that kind of, he said taking the time off from that kind of kept him from flooding. He didn't flood everything with his own work, Yeah,
and he wanted to comment on each decade too as he went along, and which was an interesting, An interesting thing most directors don't do.
Yeah. I think there's two takeaways from the movie is the biker gang hitting the zombies with pies in the face in the original. And in the remake, like one of the more ridiculous things was the zombie baby birth.
Yeah.
You know, like, his wife gets bit by a zombie, so he straps her up to a bed and gives birth to a zombie baby. And it's like, really? We've went that far?
Yeah.
But,
and what's interesting, James Gunn's playing with that stuff. Like he's taking kind of a twist on the original, like, oh, there was a pregnant woman, so how they're going to deal with that, So, yeah, I appreciated him exploring that in his own way. But, yeah, it just was like, whatever.
But, at least like you said, the one thing I can respect about the remake is while it was a remake in name and it kind of paid homage to it with the mall, it wasn't like it just wasn't trying to – it just took a general concept from the original. And then did its own thing, which I like because, like, Texas Chainsaw relied too much on some of the original stuff, but then they overplayed it so much that it just lost all of its effect, I think.
Yeah.
Whereas the remake in this one, there wasn't a lot of substance to the movie as far as, like, actual plot and character development.
Type of commentary or...
But you did just have people dying ridiculously bloody deaths, so that kind of made up for it because it was just kind of... As far as like some of the original shortcomings on it from like the way the original was, this one made up for it in the zombie chases and just the atmosphere. Because as I'm not a huge fan of these zombies like in the remake, that still makes for a lot of tense situations and just kind of some pretty good jump. Like it was fun to watch in a theater.
He's like a great music video director, Zack Snyder. His films seem like it's just fun. They're fun to watch for the most part.
It's fun to like. Right, on repeat viewings, it doesn't hold up as well. But like the first couple times you watch it with a group of people, it's pretty fun. And me being younger and to watch it, that was like probably the first zombie movie I ever really watched. And it didn't feel like it since like they kind of showed the town going to hell and the girl like leaving her house, and that was kind of cool because that hadn't really been done that much, So like a little girl bites her boyfriend in the jugular and just blood going everywhere, and then he turned like that was fun.
Yeah, the makeup effects were good in this.
Yeah, the makeup effects are really good in it. And
go ahead.
Now I love when like she gets her car and drives to the neighborhood. You can't really tell if the guy's a zombie or not, but he's just like trying to chase her down in the car, and I think he jumped on the hood, didn't he, or something, and she flicked him off, and then there's like the girl either getting raped or eaten in the back of a bus by zombies. You can't really tell. Like those were just some screwed up scenes. And
that was an awesome like little sequence there. The opening sequence of that film and the truck that goes into the gas station and blows up and everything.
It was just crazy, And that's why I said like if you just showed these two movies to a younger audience, they're probably going to pick this one just because of all that stuff. You know, because like you said, it's very much like a music video, just because everything's changing so fast and. And there's a larger array of characters, so it's easier to kind of keep up with it. And it doesn't really get as boring as some parts.
Yeah, it's my wife. She said, I like the bigger cast because I can just pick out who I like out of all these people. I was like, it's kind of like a reality show. You're just waiting to see who gets voted off, who gets killed first, and you're hoping it's not the person you like.
I think, too, with like the remake, they kind of took, like three characters you could really get behind. So the main character, Anna, played by Sarah Polley, Ving Rhames' character, Kenneth, and Michael, who's kind of the other male lead. And you had those three characters that were, kind of the ones you liked from the beginning. Ving Rhames had a little bit of character development in this movie because he kind of went...
CJ had a ton.
Yeah, I take that back, yeah.
The dude that plays, what's his name on House of Cards?
Yeah, I kept thinking of as Doug Stamper.
Yeah.
I was like, damn you, Doug. But...
One of them from Nip and Tuck too.
But he also, like his character development was essentially, they got locked up and then they got taken down the basement to help turn the power back on. His buddy died, and then he was just kind of in with the group on their next plan, and he sacrificed himself. So, it seemed like people like kind of stuck with their initial characterizations. Like he is one who actually changed a little bit. Ving Rhames. His character Kenneth went from being interested in finding his brother at the military base to being more interested in helping the others and the guy at the gun store across the street. Did anybody watch the Dawn of the Dead remake?
Oh, you mean Day of the Dead?
Or Day of the Dead, not Dawn. We are talking about Dawn of the Dead, so Day of the Dead.
Ving Rhames is awesome. God, talk about... It's one thing to have running zombies, but that movie just goes way left field.
And that movie was his brother, right? That he was looking for. It wasn't the same character from Dawn of the Dead. It was the brother mentioned in Dawn, right?
Oh, was it really? I didn't even realize that. I didn't know
Yeah.
there was an actual connection. I just thought it was weird.
That's what I thought it was. I mean,
that makes sense. Yeah, he's kind of that same role. But I literally watched that when that remake came out, and that was the last time I watched it because it was.
Yeah,
I mean, that's definitely up there with one of the worst remakes of all time.
The one guy's a vegetarian. He gets turned into a zombie, and then he doesn't eat people when he's a zombie. It's like,
have you seen that, Derek?
Yeah, I think I've seen it.
Yeah, the zombies literally like crawl on the ceiling like spiders. Like,
is it like I forgot who the main? Yeah, it wasn't very good. And then, but like in the Dawn of the Dead remake, there's like the character played by Ty Burrell, Steve, kind of the douchebag that has the sailboat they're going to use. His character was kind of funny. That was a character that should have went to Bruce Campbell.
yeah, that would have been. I mean, this movie would have got major credit if Bruce Campbell would have played that role. You're absolutely right.
But and two, there's like a major delineation between a lot of these movies. And one of the things that George Romero gave the remake shit for was that the zombies ran.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I kind of have an issue with that too, but it made it more tense, I guess.
Because I think that his point was the zombies, and I think kind of the thing that the Walking Dead show kind of deals in somewhat effectively is a zombie by itself isn't that big of a threat. It's only when there's a lot of them and you're not being careful that it becomes extremely dangerous. As opposed to the Dawn of the Dead remake, they're just fucking booking, and like the overweight lady in the wheelbarrow who becomes a zombie.
Yeah, has she ever moved that fast in her life?
Yeah, in real life, she could not move that fast. And then she turns into a zombie, and she becomes one of the most dangerous zombies out there just because of her pure size.
Yeah. Which that's like the main issue I had from it is like, to me, it takes me out a little bit of the zombie movie because, you know, like when you think of zombies, now I guess the only argument you can make in some cases is since they were still fresh, their body wasn't decomposed, yada, yada, yada. But to me, it just kind of like takes me out of it a little bit that lady can become a zombie and become an Olympic athlete. And, you know, if you put her on a football field, she would just dominate, you know, and it's like, come on.
Yeah. I mean, Zack Snyder, he has good visual, he's very much a visual filmmaker and it's great in that part, but he's not as nuanced with story. That's what Romero, and he also this film has great actors in it. Like everybody's pretty right on in this movie. Like I enjoy watching all these people act, even if, not all the characters are maybe super interesting, but the original, I mean, there's some bad acting in that original one, and Romero, he directs well as far as story and pacing goes and kind of tension with the zombies he has. But yeah, he's not like a strong visual person.
Well,
I don't think.
In the original Dawn of the Dead, you can hear some racial slurs get thrown around, which you don't see in the remake.
Yeah, and it's a shame they didn't touch on it. You know what I mean? They didn't take that opportunity to throw in any type of social commentary. They didn't have to beat you over the head with it. They could have like slid some stuff in there because that's the time to do that if you're trying to make a statement in these movies that are going to be bigger budget that a lot of people are going to see. That even if it's something small and it just puts a nugget in somebody's mind, like that's the intent of a lot of writers who do that type of stuff. But hey, the studio wanted to make a Dawn of the Dead remake to make some money. So they did it. Yeah. We made the remake, you guys. We made some money.
And out of properties based on George Romero's ideas, after the Dawn of the Dead, I would think that the biggest box office gross, when you adjust it for inflation, would probably be the 2004 remake. I would have to look this up just to be sure, but like I do remember seeing Diary of the Dead because they had a screening of it when I was in college that you can go and watch there. And that movie was... So George Romero is somebody that I'm assuming is probably not super well versed or wasn't at the time in social media. And social media has changed like drastically now from when that movie came out, and I believe it was like 2008. Because didn't that come out in the same year as Cloverfield? Let me look it up.
I think it did.
I believe it did because he was like, shit, when Cloverfield trailer came out for that.
Yeah, or it was 2007. It was 2007. But the scene in that to me kind of put the movie solidly in the camp section and it never returned from was when they had a first person view from a Nokia cell phone when they're driving in the Winnebago through a group of zombies, and it looked like a bad like PlayStation 1 game or something.
Yeah, which is funny. I'm looking at that right now. I just went to my parents' house and got a ton of DVDs, like 3 boxes full, and I found my copy of Diary of the Dead.
Like it was. Or go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
It was an interesting concept. It's just I think George Romero after Day of the Dead, like Land of the Dead was still a competently done movie that is enjoyable. I don't think it sits on the same, plateau as the first 3 films in his Of the Dead series.
Yeah.
But just everything after that just feels like, kind of like John Carpenter towards the end of his career. A lot of the stuff he's putting out wasn't at the same caliber.
Did you see Survival of the Dead?
I've seen bits and pieces.
Yeah, it's very much feels like, shot on video, kind of low budget thing. But there are some parts I like about it. It's definitely better than Diary, just based on the fact that it was shot like a traditional film and doesn't rely on that gimmick too much, Well,
I just remember William Hayden Diary of the Dead an extreme amount for years.
And I was into that. Like I was so into the concept of it because at the time, like a lot of movies, it was just starting to be the norm for movies to get shot on video and be like big theatrical releases or something that wasn't just utter garbage dumped straight to DVD or VHS. And to me at the time, it's like that looked much more similar to the things I could make with the camera and the equipment that I had at the time.
Yeah.
So it's kind of encouraging to see something on the screen that, you could approximate on your own. It's just the end result just seemed like somebody writing about something that they didn't quite understand.
So what you're saying is if you want to watch a good movie like that, just go watch VHS 2 and watch the zombie short on that one.
Well, that's another thing, too.
Different concept.
Yeah, different concept. But still, it's first-person zombie.
Because that was going for more of the visceral impact, and he was going for more of like a social commentary. And
it definitely felt like a half-baked idea. It wasn't one where he couldn't set on that because the technology moves so fast. But that's definitely one, like he came with an idea, probably wrote a script within a very short amount of time and got it financed really quickly because it's obviously really cheaply produced. And he, I feel like the actors are pretty good from what I remember. And then Land of the Dead to me, I enjoy that way more than the Dawn of the Dead remake. I feel like I could watch that a lot more.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's also, too, just kind of, like the master who created the universe returning to it versus somebody appropriating it for a remake. Like I said, I enjoy the original Of the Dead trilogy. I think that, as we mentioned before, for a younger audience that hasn't watched any of that,
very hard.
So many things have been derivative of them and taken so many elements from them and amped up the gore and the violence and the pace. So it might be harder for somebody to watch them right off the bat. Like, I'd actually like to do a video where we do like a screening of Night of the Living Dead since it's, what is it? I'm forgetting the words here. The rights for it are reverted so you can use it freely without having to pay royalties to anyone.
Oh, no. What happened? Did you hear what happened with that? Why that's kind of free reign?
Because the licensing on it got screwed up.
Yeah, they sold it or something and they accidentally cut off. I don't know if I'm supposed to make it shorter or what, but they cut off the beginning. Normally you put your copyright at the beginning of the film and at the end after the credits. They accidentally cut it off on each one. So they didn't hold a copyright for it once they sold it or whatever. So it was just free reign. So that's why everybody can release that on DVD.
So I would like to do a screening of like that. Because I think even like Dawn of the Dead is probably easier to get into for a modern audience because it's a similar premise. Because you had was the video games Dead Rising that were set in a shopping mall, and that was paying much more homage to the original movie than the remake, from what I remember, because it had story points that were similar. So there's a lot of stuff that is really heavily drawn from Dawn of the Dead, because that was a hugely influential movie that changed a lot of the things that were being done. And it's funny to read reviews at the time where a lot of people said it was just crass, gross out effect things, and then compare that to the movies coming out today.
Yeah, really.
How much it's devolved, but
I think that's the funny thing is you just see just back to last week, Texas Chainsaw, like that at the time was what, X-rated, right?
Yeah, that was they got initially. I think they got it changed later, but
Yeah, but at least it was an R rating, when it came out. And you look at like that, and then you see the remake or just current day horror movies, and it just seems like child's play almost. Just like there's nothing there. Whereas like in the original Dawn of the Dead, it wasn't that. It had its moments, but it was nowhere near as bloody or gory as the remake.
Yeah. Speaking of having younger audiences watch the original, when I was in high school, I loved Romero's films. So like Night of the Living Dead, when I finally saw that, I was just like, that was like one of my favorite films, the black and white one. And I had some people over and was like, hey, let's watch this. They were all checked out within like 15 minutes. Like nobody was interested. And I remember they all just went out to hang out at my own house, and I just sat there and watched the movie by myself.
Yeah.
Fuck you guys, this movie's awesome. But, I get it. And as we said with, Texas Chainsaw, yeah, I think younger audience could definitely get into the remake of Dawn a lot quicker than that original one.
And two, the zombie films in general are always a good way to kind of reflect on the times they're made in. Because I think it's easier to put subtext in those movies than, like slashers sometimes. Mm-hmm. But then there's also people who just very ham-fistedly throw things into movies that don't really mesh with what's going on. I think with, like I said, the original Dawn of the Dead, I think that was done very well, and it made, the points were salient without being beating you over the head with, the obviousness of them. The remake really had no point. It was just,
it was like
a fun popcorn flick that no real subtext.
And it was great at what it did. Wanted to get people in their seats, and it was fun, quick paced. People that are diehard Romero fans, I understand why they were, would be pissed that they ran and all this stuff, because it's whatever. But another thing I like about like the original, one of the scenes that's so great because it seems like so epic in scope and it's set over all this time, is when now what's her name? What's the woman's name?
Francine.
When Francine is, they're waiting on Steven or Flyboy after they assume he's turned into a zombie, and he's coming around the door and she's like waiting, and then she sees him. You know what I mean? And it's just like it's like a pretty substantial moment in the film, and it's kind of dramatic and everything. And she's like finally lets him go, like knows that he's changed. That's it. And it's them like kind of looking at each other, and I know he's kind of looking off, but like in the remake, when her husband turns, because it's so frantic, there's no time for her to really react and be too sad at that moment. She's kind of running out, and that's kind of the whole feeling of the remake, is it doesn't give you time to really think about much stuff. I mean, there's moments where it definitely breathes, but normally those are filled with moments of like fun and humor. Yeah. But the other one, it's just there's a lot of time to interject things in between those scenes, and it makes it a lot more satisfying. Again, with the remake, it's awesome, that first scene when she steps out of her door and she sees all the carnage, and that's like a great opening. But the original, maybe it's not as fun, but I think it's humorous, and it just it entertains me and does something on a different level when they're flying over and they're like, look, these rednecks are probably enjoying this, and it's everybody drinking beers, taking pictures. Like, that to me is more satisfying on a different level. But I can understand why it wouldn't be as appealing as the other one, because the other one's just kind of an immediate satisfaction thing. But those two things are kind of the big difference in those films for me, and on a larger scale. But those are kind of like small moments that kind of encapsulate what those films are about and how they present their ideas.
Yeah, and one thing I think that we haven't really touched on yet is in the original, it starts out at a news station before they, go off and go to this mall, or before it shows any of the stuff with the police or the SWAT team. So you start off in a news station, and then once they get to the mall, they watch news broadcasts that talk about things, and you see the slow degradation of the newscast, like where it goes from like a normal newscast just to like some guy kind of blabbering on kind of crazily about how they should feed the zombies, and and then eventually just all broadcasts go off air, which is just a very bad sign of what's going on in the world. Mm-hmm. And then in the remake, they kind of have a similar idea where it shows them watch the news some, and then they turn it on and it's just blank and there's nothing on, there's no signal. So it's a lot, like I said, everything in the remake is kind of just a truncated
gets to the point.
Fast story. As I think it was It was
they get them on like 15 minutes or 10 minutes in the remake, it feels like,
Yeah, they're there pretty quick. It's just I felt like there's more of an impending sense of doom as you watch the broadcast slowly get worse and worse and then go away.
Yeah. Well, one thing too though is, and this is just my big, a lot of reasons why zombie movies to me are just a huge turnoff in this current, I guess, zombie movie climate. Like in the original, while the ending was still kind of unknown to people, you still had a general idea that at least one or two people made it out to go do something. You don't know what their future held because they got in a helicopter and left, but you know that at least those two people removed themselves from that situation safely and then went on to do whatever. Whereas the current trend in zombie movies is to just leave you on a cliffhanger ending. Because they go to the area, go to the boat, and then just all hell breaks loose, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, that's just like the only, and once you do that in one zombie movie and every zombie movie after that chooses those styles of endings, it just loses its effectiveness.
Well, what the original ending for Dawn of the Dead was going to be?
Yeah, something pretty bad, I'm sure.
Where Francine commits suicide by getting her head chopped off by getting her head chopped by the helicopter blade, which they actually repurposed and did with another zombie earlier in the film. And then
who my wife called Frankenstein because his head was so tall, and she's like, "Oh, they needed to make his head tall so they could chop it off."
And then Peter was going to commit suicide. So
yeah, that's not a great ending either. But
I mean, hey, it
was very nihilistic.
But it felt like this though. At least they died, and you knew that they died.
Yes,
it didn't just be like we don't know what happened.
Good.
Yeah, either one. I'm fine with some type of
out.
Yeah, I get tired of the zombie movies always just leaving because like even the 28 whatever, those franchises are really bad about that as well, where you never get a certain set ending on it, and it's just like give me a little bit of something here because it just as a whole that entire franchise, just that entire zombie movie, they all do that.
It almost feels like you don't know what you want to say. You don't know what the final message is to be. Like the original was going to be nihilistic or one of kind of somewhat of hope. And it's like, okay, well, they went with hope, and that's fine that they have a clear message. Again, with the remake, it didn't really have a message to begin with, and it didn't end with one either.
Well, and two, like the ending of the remake, I think that they mentioned, like after they get on the boat and you find out that the character of Michael got bit by a zombie or got bitten as they, take off, you can hear him shoot himself. And then it shows video footage of Ty Burrell's character on the boat, and then it cuts to them at the end, like running crazy, like hurriedly through zombies and stuff. So, once again, as Derek said, it kind of gives you a cliffhanger. But, I think that's kind of par for the course in that genre. Most of the movies do tend to either kill all the characters or kill all but one or leave you ambiguous as to some of them just to leave room for a sequel. Because I know that there's supposed to be a Dawn of the Dead sequel that never materialized.
Called what? Army of the Dead?
Yeah.
Dawn of the Dead 2, Dawn of the Dead.
Dawn of the Dead 2, Dead by Dawn.
Dead by Dawn. Not to be confused with Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn.
But, like I said, I think that the remake was enjoyable, but it was kind of forgettable. It's not something that people are probably going back to now.
Yeah, it's definitely an enjoyable movie. Like, as opposed to like what we watched last week with Texas Chainsaw Remake, like there's nothing that wants me to revisit that movie other than we watched it for the podcast. Whereas like the Dawn of the Dead remake it's crazy enough and fun enough that like I wouldn't mind to watch it again. Like
I used to watch it on TV when it would come on.
Yeah.
I'd at least turn it on, but I've never had the urge to like I'm gonna watch this again from the beginning to end because it's super satisfying.
But like if I heard somebody talking about good zombie movies and they were to say there's a Dawn of the Dead remake, or maybe they didn't know there's an original, they just talked about the 2004 one, I wouldn't have like a huge issue. Be like, oh no, I think that it's a good enough standalone zombie film. Like I said, it's very much par for the course of what's out there, but it's probably a lot better than some of the bad ones there.
Yeah, it's definitely. I'm not going to sit here and rank it all in my mind, but definitely out of all there are, top 15. Maybe somewhere close to top 10. I know people are like, what? But it's up there considering how many there are and how many terrible zombie films are out there.
And, especially too with the, Walking Dead's popularity, I'm sure there's just a shit ton of them out there too, like on Netflix and just all the instant services you can probably watch.
A bunch of the DVDs I got from my parents' house, I bought from Hollywood Videos when they were shutting down. I was really into like low budget horror at the time because, like William, I was interested in making films and stuff. And there was a ton of crappy zombie films then, like Cockney and Zombies. I don't know if that wasn't one, but there was one like Redneck zombie film. There was tons of zombie crap at the time, just shot on video, just looked awful. So, yeah, I mean, out of the bigger budget ones, this is, you know, it has enough behind it. And Zack Snyder, he's done all right in his career, but he's pretty much stayed the same for me on his films. Like, oh yeah, I enjoyed watching this, but don't really care to watch it again.
Oh, very stylistic with that much substance.
Yeah, but I think you're right though. I mean, this is like the music video. It's like the MTV version, maybe not the MTV version, but just the music video version of a zombie movie. Mm-hmm. You know, it's going to move fast enough to keep your interest, and the shit hits the fan pretty quick into the beginning of the movie. And never loses pace. So there's not really any boring moments in the movie, but there's just not much substance.
I think, like, if I was to talk about, like, that era, I still think Shaun of the Dead.
Oh, yeah.
It's definitely, like, in my opinion, in terms of just, mainstream zombie movies, it's, very close to the top.
Yes, yeah.
It's up there with the Romero films, because it's the one that took that concept, like I said, appropriately straddled the line between paying homage while doing something new, doing something fun, but, not making it an outright parody.
And at this point, there's no qualifiers for that film. Like some of these older films we watch, we mentioned, look, I understand this is bad. The original Dawn of the Dead, some of the acting isn't great. There's all these things, but Shaun, it's like, it fires on all cylinders.
Yeah, so I guess we can kind of, just, ramp up our opinions on these movies. So, like the Dawn of the Dead, like I had actually... Like I said, I didn't see that one before Day of the Dead, but when I actually watched it, and when I still lived at home, me and Derek had watched it a few times, and actually, like I had only seen bits and pieces of it prior to that. Like I actually really, really enjoyed it. Like I said, without having to qualify with anything, I just thought that it touched on a lot of different social issues without being overt about them, and it just made you think. And it was just kind of fun the way that it was structured, where they kind of cleared the zombies out, and there was a pretty big stretch where zombies weren't really involved in the story at all, and then just all got brought back in because of human greed and
I think
biker gangs.
Yeah, I think the more interesting thing about this movie is the most dangerous thing weren't the zombies in it. Like you said, it was the greed or just the selfish nature of humans. That was like the more dangerous part.
That's pretty much all the time been Romero's, message with a lot of his films. Is that like man is their own downfall.
And then in the remake, it was kind of just the zombies were the main threat because they were faster.
Yeah, they were faster and stronger than humans.
So the remake is a perfectly fine, movie to watch. It definitely, I think, fit into the TNT era of like being shown on loop and catching bits and pieces of it here and there on cable over the course of a few years. But it's it's a fun movie. It doesn't really touch on it doesn't degrade the original by existing like some of these remakes have, because it doesn't really attempt to do the same thing. It kind of did something different. So, it can exist without being, desecrating the original's names. So, it's fun, it's fine, but the original still, the 1978 Romero version still is the definitive version of that movie.
Yeah, I'm pretty much right there with you. Like, I enjoyed it when it came out in theaters. I was excited for it to come out. I was like, oh, cool, they're remaking Dawn of the Dead, because I was a Romero fan before that. But, and I thought it was fine. I was like, whatever, it doesn't hurt my opinion of the original. And there weren't as many remakes, in 2004, so it wasn't a big thing now where it was like, oh, I'm getting so tired of these remakes. It was actually kind of exciting at the time when they started remaking films.
And two, though,
to
I
a certain
feel like
degree.
That this movie probably gets more from a remake than some of the other ones just because of special effects and, the amount you can get away with. Because I think about, like, if they made a movie this gory when the original one came out, probably wouldn't have been released in the theaters, or if it did, it would have been extremely limited release. Whereas now, like, movies like this can probably get a little bit out of being remade just because of the effects and stuff. But, and one thing, too, I think that's more enjoyable about most zombie films, the exception of The Walking Dead and their animated blood, is that you usually get no CGI for the most part. With the exception of, like, Zombie, what was the movie with Brad Pitt in it? World War Z.
Yeah, World War Z.
With the exception of World War Z, typically you get a bunch of practical effects, which is one thing that's always enjoyable about zombie films. Even the shitty ones, you still get the practical effects.
I've seen some crappy ones with some crappy CGI, though, to be fair.
Yeah, and that's the one thing. But like, at least in this one, I don't really remember much CGI in it at all.
Well, they hit it pretty well.
Yeah, they hit it pretty well. I'm sure they did. Because I know there's like a Legolas zombie that was climbing through rafters and stuff.
I think that the scene where they throw the propane tank and shoot it and all the zombies fall down, that probably had to have been computer animated.
No, they just made everybody risk their lives.
But when you do a pulled out overhead shot like that, it's easier to hide the fact that you're adding in computer stuff.
We were talking too, that car crash scene in the beginning, the overhead helicopter shot, that had to be CGI as well, right? Because I mean, that was just such a perfect impact and spin on that car. I mean, I know the explosion probably was.
Maybe we could.
I mean, I guess they. I mean, I don't.
Mythbusters.
Yeah.
But
Ask them, they'll figure it out.
But if we didn't notice, then that means it did a pretty good job.
Yeah. Like I said, they hit it well in here. It's just, and that's what's kind of fun. Like, was that CGI? Was that practical? That's totally fine if you can't tell. But I would rather have bad practical effects than bad CGI.
Oh yeah, because practical effects, even if they're bad practical effects, they still hold up.
Or noticeable CGI, even if it looked good, but it was still noticeable. I'd rather have crappy practical.
Yeah, I just think the crappy practical effects, like 5-10 years later, still hold up way better than just bad CGI.
Yeah. All right. Any other thoughts on the original versus remake on this? One thing, the original remake of Night of the Living Dead, although it took a lot of the same stuff, it has enough twists that I like that original remake, which was directed by Savini of Night of the Living Dead, rather than Dawn of the Dead, but both of them are staying way above than that Day of the Dead remake.
Well, I think a lot of zombie films have stayed above that.
Yeah.
All right.
Who did that? Who did that? I think they should be banned from making films. Let me see.
Ubo?
No, it wasn't Uwe Boll.
Oh, he did House of the Dead, which is so good.
Day of the Dead, 2008. Oh, Steve Miner? Oh, my God. I didn't realize that. Friday the 13th.
Halloween H2O. Lake Placid.
Lake Placid had Betty White in it.
So, once again, you can bring in somebody that has experience in the genre and still turn out a complete dud.
And didn't it also have the dude from Independence Day, too, in Lake Placid?
Well, yeah, Bill Pullman.
Yeah, did he do the same speech about the alligator when they went in there to
This alligator has come from above in space.
We would not go silently into the night. Because, they were fighting at night.
Speaking of giant things, giant alligators, giant sharks, the video I did this week was on Razorback, which is about a giant razorback terrorizing the Australian outback. So check that out if you like fun 80s horror films. And that's definitely one of my favorites.
And to tie into the zombies, the next video we have coming out on the site this Friday, which will be the 10th, I believe, of July, will be the top 5 underrated foreign zombie films. So it's some movies that you may have not heard of. And most of these movies, they're ones that Corey picks. So I've only seen a couple of them. And just skimming through them to pick clips for the video. Some of these movies are kind of messed up. So it's something to watch out for. And as always, if you enjoy the podcast, make sure to go out in iTunes and give us a review. It just helps more people find the podcast or determine if they want to hit subscribe. And as always, you can find everything we're doing at housebythevideostore.com. You can find us on facebook.com/HBTVS. And you can also find us on Twitter, Vine, and Instagram at HBTVS_official. We're also on Vimeo, though Vimeo is kind of just out there. We also have a Reddit account. It's HBTVS_official, so we post a lot of our stuff to Reddit as well.
Yeah, we get a lot of views from Reddit, so thankfully people on there click on stuff. So if you happen to see us, upvote us so we can get some more eyeballs on our stuff.
Yeah, because it's hard to get content in front of people's eyeballs these days with so many options, and especially with Reddit now and kind of Revolt. That's an interesting development, but
we'll start our own message board, so you can move on over to ours and leave Reddit.
We'll start our own 4chan thread. I don't think I've ever used 4chan. I've only went there like once or twice, but But beyond that, if you want to find individually what we're doing on the internet, you can find me on Twitter at Will_droid.
Okay, and I'm at Blevin Sean on Twitter.
You can find me on Instagram at MetaWorldDerek.
And that will bring this episode of the House by the Video Store podcast to a close. As always, thanks for listening.